Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today another detailed forecast update coming your way. We're going to be talking about showers and storms expected to dominate the weather scene across southern and southeastern Queensland. We'll also talk about some severe thunderstorms that are on the forecast for the Sunshine Coast and the central parts of Queensland. We'll recap on some tropical weather that's been occurring up in the Northern Territory and take a look at the weather forecast up there. And we'll also talk about heatwave conditions expected to extend into Western Australia, parts of the Northern Territory, and then into South Australia as this week draws to an end. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated, and daily forecast updates are going to return from today. So we're going to start things off over in the southeast of Queensland. There has been quite a lot of action over the last couple of days. Tuesday we did receive severe thunderstorms across parts of the Roma to Room area. Same story for Monday, some strong severe thunderstorms were there, and now that it's Thursday we're looking at another round of potentially severe thunderstorms tonight and into tomorrow morning. So let's take a look at the forecast right now. You can see by around 3 o'clock this afternoon we're going to see some thunderstorms pipe up around the Chinchilla, Taroom and Injune area, extending up towards Rolleston. We'll also have some thunderstorms piping up along the Sunshine Coast, and then into central Queensland up towards Rockhampton and Agnes Water. We'll have a few showers and storms up there, and a few showers and storms also expected to extend north towards Ogmore later on this afternoon and evening. Now these thunderstorms do potentially go severe by around 6 or 7 o'clock tonight, and extending in towards the late evening hours of around 10 to 11 o'clock later on tonight. We are expecting severe thunderstorms to be present along parts of the Sunshine Coast and up towards the central Queensland coast, specifically outside of Hervey Bay, north of Maroochydore, and then up towards Bundaberg and Agnes Water. We'll see a band of severe thunderstorms potentially up there. We'll also have the chance of thunderstorms into the immediate northeast of New South Wales, but the chances there do remain relatively slim. The chance of thunderstorms is also going to be present later, early on tomorrow morning outside of the Gold Coast, but again the chances there are going to be pretty slim by the looks of things. It's going to be a warm day across parts of Queensland as well. Temperatures expected to go up into the high 20s into the early 30s for some locations, and there's going to be a lot of energy and a lot of fuel for these thunderstorms to make the most of later on this afternoon when they do begin to pipe up. This is a look at the convective available potential energy values, which is an arbitrary number nonetheless, but still a number that describes how much energy there is in the atmosphere for these thunderstorms to make the most of. And what has got me concerned is for locations between Maroochydore and Hervey Bay. There's very high convective available potential energy values up there. We've got a huge amount of energy expected in this area, and with thunderstorms expected to pipe up later on this afternoon and evening, they will have a birthday party in this environment, which means they will be able to go severe pretty quickly, and I'd not be surprised if we saw a couple of slow-moving supercell thunderstorms as well up towards Hervey Bay, or at least north of Maroochydore at around 6 or 7 p.m. tonight, but they will still be few and far between. The forecast has actually been reduced from what we were talking about a couple of days ago when we were expecting a proper severe thunderstorm outbreak. The chance of severe thunderstorms is remaining for this part of Queensland into the southeast of the state and along the Sunshine Coast, but again the chances aren't exactly high at this time, so nothing really worth worrying about. We'll also take a look at Friday. We are expecting a round of severe thunderstorms as well Friday afternoon, and what's got me a little bit more concerned with these thunderstorms on Friday afternoon and evening is the fact that they're going to be pretty slow moving, which means that they could go severe warned for the rainfall accumulations, just because they will be slow moving and they'll be able to dump a lot of rainfall in a short period of time across certain locations, and this rainfall could cause some minor to moderate flooding in some locations. Again, we're not expecting an all-out flooding emergency across parts of southeastern Queensland. No, from these thunderstorms that's not going to happen, but we could still see a couple of areas get flash flooding or even some minor riverine flooding from these thunderstorms on Friday afternoon and evening. And if you're wondering why this the windy software is bugging out, I'm currently in a place with some pretty bad reception at this time, so I've had to switch off the premium mode just so I can load it up a lot quicker, and unfortunately that has given us access to the 3-hour forecast as opposed to the 1-hour forecast on windy.com. Still a fantastic forecast to use. It isn't as high resolution as we're used to on this channel, unfortunately. The rainfall will ease off from these thunderstorms at around 7 or 8 p.m. local time. A few thunderstorms still possible to continue into the evening hours and into the early nighttime hours, and a couple of storms expected up towards Fraser Island and Hervey Bay later on into tomorrow night into early Saturday morning. Saturday we're also expecting another outbreak of thunderstorms, and these ones could potentially be severe as well outside of Billawheeler and Dingo. Severe thunderstorms, I know that we talk about them pretty much every single day on this channel, but they are very prevalent across parts of southeastern and central central Queensland at this time of the year. I wouldn't call this a 3-day severe thunderstorm outbreak, but certainly the chance of some good thunderstorms piping up outside of Eddas Void up towards Billawheeler, north of Rolleston and up towards Dingo and Emerald later on a Saturday afternoon, easing off by Saturday evening and into later Saturday night south of Rockhampton. Again, it looks like the main threat from these thunderstorms both tonight, so Thursday, Friday and into Saturday. We are expecting pulse thunderstorms, most likely for the most part non-severe, but we'll still see a couple of severe pulse thunderstorms here and there for damaging winds, heavy rainfall and the potential for medium to large sized hailstones, especially across the central Queensland coastline and the Sunshine Coast. The chance of hailstones is elevated just because of the favourable environment for these thunderstorms that's prevalent across this part of Queensland at this time of the year. And this rainfall does quite quickly add on, even through Sunday. We're not really expecting anything in the way of rainfall, but the rainfall over the next 3 days is going to be quite high for this part of for parts of southeastern Queensland, rather. You can see rainfall is expected to really pipe up in some locations. The Access G3 really calling for some high rainfall accumulations for some locations, and that's just because of the prevalence of these thunderstorms. Now, using the rainfall forecast for a forecast model to predict rainfall from thunderstorms is always, more often than not, a pretty silly idea, but it does give you an idea of what the maximum rainfall accumulations are going to be from these thunderstorms. And you can see the Access G3 expecting totals up towards 40, potentially 50 millimetres. Further offshore, you're looking at rainfall accumulations up towards 100 millimetres, but I doubt they'll make themselves on the shore at this time. Certainly from the right type of thunderstorms, especially those slow-moving pulse thunderstorms on Friday afternoon and evening. I would not be surprised if locations outside of Gympie and Kingaroy picked up accumulations up towards 60 or 70 millimetres, and potentially a little bit more than that for some specific locations in the central Queensland area. Good news, however, for those that are sick and tired of thunderstorms, looking deeper on into the future, especially from Sunday onwards, the rainfall and the thunderstorms do pipe down, which is good news because we do probably want a couple of days of calmer conditions for parts of this, for the southeast of Queensland. Thunderstorms still possible next Tuesday, the 5th of November, and thunderstorms also going to be possible on Wednesday and Thursday. And then into Friday, we're expecting a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak, but we will talk about this one in greater detail in a future forecast update. The details on this thunderstorm event still a little bit uncertain as we get later on into the first week of November, Thursday and Friday, the 7th and 8th respectively. A couple of showers and storms do look possible at this time, and these ones do look to be a little bit more widespread, at least in the rainfall accumulations, which is why we're getting a pretty decent amount of rainfall between Tuesday and Saturday the 5th and 9th of November. You can see outside of Kingaroy some good rainfall accumulations possible from this, I guess, thunderstorm / shower outbreak, or some steady rainfall expected on Thursday and Friday as we just talked about. Again, we will touch on this on a future forecast update, but still 60 or 70 millimetres would be welcome rainfall for this part of southeastern Queensland. So we will be keeping our fingers and probably toes crossed as well for some of this rainfall. They do definitely need it in this part of Queensland, and all rainfall is pretty welcome across this part of Queensland at this time of the year. So yeah, looking pretty decent in terms of rainfall and thunderstorm activity across parts of Queensland. We'll now take a look up into the tropics and take a look at what is expected over the next 10 days there. In terms of tropical northern Queensland, it's still remaining pretty boring. The Eastern Rebellion not calling for any major rainfall pockets over pretty much any location in northern Queensland, north of sort of Rockhampton or Longreach. There are going to be a few pockets of higher rainfall accumulation, specifically around Corumba and onto Mornington Island. Some good rainfall is possible there, but again, really a drop in the ocean for this time of the year. The Access G3 also not calling for any standout areas in terms of rainfall. In fact, they are keeping far north Queensland around the Cairns area bone dry, which is pretty unusual for this time of the year. It's not going to be long, however, until the rainfall really does begin to pipe up for those locations. And now into the Northern Territory, they have had a healthy outbreak of thunderstorms overnight, which are still continuing around the Darwin area and up to the Melville Island area as well into this morning. So some good rainfall has been reported up there. And you can see it here on the radar and satellite, some good thunderstorms currently being making their presence felt north of the Darwin area, which are containing some pretty heavy showers here and there. And unfortunately for some locations, they are slow moving, which means rainfall accumulations have been very high overnight. Just outside of Adelaide River, peak rainfall accumulations overnight topped out at 88 millimetres, I believe, and inside of the Darwin metro area, rainfall accumulations have been pretty inconsistent between 10 and 60 millimetres, so some pretty good falls have been recorded here and there. Unfortunately, it does look like a few locations have completely missed out on the rainfall, but it definitely looks like some good falls have been reported for the most part here and there for parts of the Northern Territory, which is fantastic to see. They do really need the rainfall, especially for this time of the year. The showers and storms will ease off temporarily throughout this morning and then into the early afternoon hours before they pipe up again across areas outside of Jebaru and across towards Darwin later on this afternoon and evening as well. Typical for this time of the year, but still, we are going to have a couple of pockets of heavy rainfall across parts of the Northern Territory, and I would not be surprised if we saw a couple of severe thunderstorms as well, specifically for isolated pockets of heavy rainfall and damaging winds across parts of the Northern Territory. Typical for this time of the year, like I said, but still some heavy rainfall is expected, and it is a stark contrast to the weather from about 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about dry conditions up in the Northern Territory. Now it's all out thunderstorms here and there. Again, the weather is completely normal and stock standard for this time of the year up in the Northern Territory, but this time it is a stark contrast to what we were experiencing just a couple of weeks ago with the dry season. The wet season is making herself feel present across parts of the Northern Territory, which is fantastic to see, and no doubt has got a lot of people excited, not only from the relief of the build-up, but also just in terms of the rainfall. I know a lot of people up in the Northern Territory and Queensland love the rainfall, and they really do hang out for it this time of the year. Good rainfall accumulations as well over the next 10 days, up towards 40-50 millimetres of some locations, and that extends across into the Kimberley region of WA. Rainfall accumulations expected to top out at about 50 millimetres, normal for this time of the year, but still rather high for some locations. It certainly is an early rainfall onset year, that's for sure, with that rainfall making itself welcome across parts of the Northern Kimberley. And just diving into the West Australia rainfall forecast a little bit across into the Kimberley, showers and storms expected tonight and into tomorrow morning as well, but for the most part we're not expecting any particularly standout stormy days. It's just going to be showers and storms piping up pretty consistently over the next 10 days more or less, and that will be fueled by the very warm temperatures that we're expecting across parts of the top end of WA and into the Northern Territory, and those temperatures are going to be quite warm indeed. Not so much for this time of the year. We're now heading into November, so the 40 or mid 40 degree days are not as unusual as what we were talking about a couple of days ago when we were talking about those mid 40 degree days outside of Telfer and Marble Bar. But just taking a look at the temperature forecast, you can see Marble Bar expecting to hit at least 42 on the next 10 days of the forecast, and up towards 45 degrees on Saturday, the 2nd of November. Very warm indeed, with temperature pockets up towards 46 or 47 outside of Marble Bar and Port Hedland. Typical for this time of the year, like I said, but still very, very warm indeed, and that's going to be powered as this West Coast trough moves inland from the west coast of Western Australia and bringing in those warm temperatures into parts of the goldfields in the south interior, but very warm indeed across parts of Western Australia, and this heat will extend early next week in towards the Northern Territory and parts of South Australia. Warm temperatures as well make themselves present across parts of Queensland into next Tuesday, the 5th of November, with temperatures up towards 43 and 44 degrees between Mount Isa and Birdsville, so some very warm temperatures expected out there, and temperatures into the high 30s and early 40s for a lot of South Australia and into New South Wales as well. It's the Australian summer, so we expect this type of heat on a daily basis this time of the year, but it is certainly a stark contrast to once again what we were seeing 2 weeks ago, with temperatures into the early 30s for much of Queensland and the Northern Territory, and now we're seeing temperatures into in some locations up into the early to mid 40s for some of these locations. So very warm indeed, and it's got very warm very quickly. Anyways, I digress. Let's head back into Western Australia, where I would like to talk about the heatwave conditions expected to extend across parts of the southwest and then into the central west and parts of the goldfields. We've got another warm day expected for Perth today. Temperatures up towards 33 degrees for the metro area. Those temperatures will cool later on this afternoon with a weak sea breeze expected, bringing in a bit of reprieve to those temperatures before a weak cold front is expected to impact the southwest corner of Western Australia by Saturday morning and into early Saturday afternoon. Now this weak cold front will bring cool temperatures and a very welcome cool change to parts of the southwest. We're not ready for the hot weather just yet around the Perth metro area, so this cold front will bring in some welcome cool weather. However, it's still going to be a stinker tomorrow, Friday the 1st of November, across parts of the wheat belt and into the goldfields as just mentioned. Merredin and Southern Cross both expecting their first 40 degree day of summer. Typical weather for this time of the year. It's still substantially warmer than the average. 40 degree days aren't a surprise for some of these locations into the central wheat belt in November. However, again, we're still talking about temperatures about 12 to 13 degrees Celsius above average for some of these locations. Mount Magnet expecting a top of 42 up towards Meekatharra as well, 42. Kew expecting a warm top of 41, so it's going to be very warm across parts of the Gascoyne as well. And those temperatures aren't going to cool down much overnight as well. Kalgoorlie expecting an overnight minimum of around 24 degrees on Saturday morning, and temperatures into the high 20s overnight outside of Rawlinna and then outside of Coquilabity and Esperance as well. Some temperatures are going to be very warm into the high 20s overnight on Saturday morning, and then warming up very quickly on Saturday afternoon as well for parts of the Euclid district, the South Interior, and then into South Australia as well. Outside of Western Australia, we're expecting some very warm temperatures. Warburton expecting a top of 42, and then down towards Maralinga and parts of desert South Australia as well, temperatures up into the high 30s and early 40s, pretty widespread across Saturday, and that's going to start a couple of days of hot weather for parts of South Australia, especially into the northeastern corner of the state. It's going to get pretty warm throughout the early parts of the later parts of this weekend and into the early parts of next week. Temperatures outside of Lake Eyre expecting to be into the high 40s, up towards 45, 46 for some locations. Typical for this time of the year. I feel like I've said that about 20 times in this forecast update, but still blisteringly warm, and temperatures that they're not exactly ready for at this time of the year. But it's that time of the year for Australia where we do start to see these really warm temperatures extend across the desert and the interior parts. So it's not a complete surprise for us. It's certainly not a complete surprise for me. We were expecting warm temperatures right out of the gate for summer, but again, this is certainly going to be a pretty unwelcome start to summer for some of these locations that were enjoying the cooler days at this time. But yeah, that basically does it for this forecast update. Unfortunately, I've had to switch off the windy premium, so that's why the data has been a little bit worse, a little bit lower resolution in this forecast update, but it's still what I would declare an accurate forecast, and certainly one that I can back at this time. We'll switch it back to the windy premium tomorrow morning. I think I'll get it set up on another account as well. Highly recommend Windy. I forget to mention them pretty much every single video, but it's a fantastic software, and I highly recommend pretty much everyone to check it out. It's so easy to use, and you can make your own detailed weather forecasts as well on it. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. I could not run the show without them. Their support is amazing. But that is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.